hi, hello, namaste, everyone who watching today's live. Myself Gautam, and we have my another friend Sriram here. We are waiting for the Dr. Virenchi Sharma to join us. And right now, as we have posted before, we're going to talk about mental illness. And today, Sriram going to explain you all the further details. Sriram.
Hi everyone, very good evening. Thank you so much for joining live here, the session. And we have Dr. Virenchi, and Dr. Virenchi Sharma is one of the renowned psychiatrists in Hyderabad. And it's pleasure to have Dr. Virenchi here. And when I first reached to him asking about to take a session, he is very welcoming and he's very interested to kind of talk with all of our team members. And welcome, Dr. Virenchi. It's a pleasure to have you on the live today.
Thank you so much, sir. It really means a lot, and thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to actually meet your whole team members and interact with them today.
Pleasure is ours.
Doctor, let's start with the first basic question that we have. And so, what do you think is mental wellness or mental health? I mean, is it the topic that is not that shouldn't be talked in a public, or people can talk openly? And what do you think? And what is mental wellness or mental health completely about?
Well, if you actually look at the World Health Organization definition of health, it says physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. So undoubtedly, the kind of priority that has been given to physical health is the same priority given to mental health also. So mental health is one of the most important aspects of a human's growth, of a human's livelihood, and it actually decides the quality of life that we all live. So mental well-being is totally something that has to be prioritized. Unfortunately, it has never been prioritized. Maybe multiple dimensions of institutes have to be blamed for that, but somewhere right now we all understand that mental health is the need of the hour. With the increase of mental health issues that are coming up, I think it's one of the most important things that we all need to focus on right now. I'll tell you some statistical data also. When I was a student back in 2010. We every year World Health Organization talks about the number of deaths that happen and the cause of deaths. So back in 2010, the cause of deaths were, if I remember, number one were road traffic accidents, number two was heart related issues, number three was cancers, and somewhere sixth or seventh or eighth was suicides. But WHO back in 2010 itself said that by 2020, the leading cause of death all around the world will be suicides. And I think the numbers actually became number one. The cause became number one in 2019 itself. So that actually shows the severity of the issue all around the world. And somewhere that is another big reason why mental health or mental well-being is something that has to be prioritized and is the need of the hour.
So Gautam and me were discussing before our call about the same statistics that suicide being the main reason in the coming years. And that's really a thing that we have to definitely look at. Doctor, and the major question...
Yeah, I have something related to it. Is 2020 really that cause of the death is due to suicide? Number one, is it true?
Yes. I think the maximum number of deaths, before the pandemic at least, before the pandemic, the leading cause of deaths has been mental health issues and suicides. And even if you look at the Indian statistics, there are around 300 suicides happening every single day. And, I was fortunate to be in a recent, symposium by the National Psychiatric Conference, held in Kolkata in 2020 Jan. And I had the opportunity to present about the statistical data, the recent National Crime Report Bureau statistics. So another unfortunate thing is the maximum deaths happening in India, specifically when we talk through suicides, is between the age group of 15 to 45. So this is, the most reproductive, most important age group in somebody's life, be it education, be it job, be it starting a family, and, be it, seeing success, tasting success in life, going forward with our goals. And in this age group, when you see the maximum suicides, it's pretty unfortunate. And when we compare our numbers to the world also, the suicides in men that happen in India, we are standing on the 22nd rank country-wise. And suicides in women all around the world, India is standing on the 6th position. So that's a very scary number. And
yes, it is.
Speaks about the need.
Thanks for the insights, doctor. And when we say that the age group is between 15 to 25, and how do we identify that this person is going with a mental trauma, or this person needs some kind of counseling? I mean, can we kind of identify beforehand so that we will not end up hearing about the suicide or any other thing that is going beyond? So any kind of tips or anything that we can do from our end to try to kind of help the people who are really suffering for this?
Well, undoubtedly, there are a lot of warning signs that can be identified through the person's behavior. And when we see such behaviors, when we start talking to them, they even speak about their emotions, they even speak about their thoughts, and that adds upon, because thoughts, emotions, and behavior go hand in hand. You have a negative thought, your emotion is negative, and your behavior is negative.
Doctor, sorry to interrupt. Can you just talk a bit louder? We are losing your voice.
Yeah. So, like I said, the most important thing that we can identify is in the person's behavior. Because a lot of times thoughts, emotions, and behaviors go hand in hand. And identifying is through the behaviors. And once we identify a behavior like that, the next thing that we need to do is, question the person about his thoughts, his emotions, and a lot more clarity about the underlying illness comes up. So some of the important behaviors that we should be looking at is, one, I always say, a change in the biological rhythm. So somebody who happily sleeps for 6 to 8 hours, all of a sudden starts losing on sleep, unable to fall asleep. Even if they fall asleep, they're suddenly getting up with a startle kind of a reflex. When they get up in the morning, they're not feeling that freshness. So these are somewhere disturbances that start off with. And then, they start losing interest in activities, then their energy levels come down. So somebody who would always enjoy going for a run, or somebody who would enjoy going and meeting people, suddenly says that, I'm not wanting to do this anymore. I feel like staying alone. And then appetite disturbances, like I spoke. Somebody is not able to relish the food that they like. And then gradually they start building up that negativity, where their confidence levels drop, their self-esteem comes down. And somebody who's depressed, especially depressed, we see the triad of negativity. There is negativity about themselves, there is negativity about the future, and there is negativity about the people around us also. So when somebody is having such behaviors or such thoughts, we need to surely understand that this could be an underlying mental health issue. And to actually, make this a little more easier, I think, great startups and NGOs like, you guys, when you all step out, when the government, gives enough support, we should be introducing all of this right from the childhood. So, because like I said, the age group starts much younger. So somebody who's in school also can be depressed. A 6-year-old or an 8-year-old child also can be depressed. So somewhere these symptoms which help us in identifying should be prioritized by the authorities and should be taught to every human being. And when it starts from a childhood age, identification becomes really easy.
Okay, as you were stating some symptoms, right? Like there is a similar case we have come through. So like there is a situation. Okay, I'll just give you a situation. It's like we all know, all the friends and all the relatives, not the relatives, all the friends, relatives who are related to friends know these things. But the patient or the whatever you call it, I don't want the other friend who is suffering from that is not ready to take the medication or the help of the other therapist, what is your recommendation? Like, as we should go to their parents and address them, or else we should actually force him or pull him in and take him into the therapist. So, like, what is your suggestion, doctor, regarding?
I think, like I said, when somebody is having an underlying depression, maybe his ability or his judgment or his ability to take a decision is somewhere lost. So at this point, somebody responsible should be stepping out. Not always. Most of the times we see people coming out and discussing about their issue, but in some serious level of illnesses, we see that the person loses that capacity to take a judgment, to go to the doctor or the therapist, or like I said, he's negative. He's negative about the future, so he does not have a ray of hope. So even that
he's having a kind of tendency, doctor, like he's okay to tell with the friends, but he's not okay to share with his or her parents. Because if we go ahead and tell that, we will inform their parents and we'll consult a psychiatrist, and he's telling that I'll commit suicide. I mean, so this is the toughest situation that maybe me and Gautam, we all together came across through one of our common friend. In that kind of situation, do we need to force that person to take it to psychiatrist, or do we need to go ahead and inform to their parents how we can go ahead? This is a real scenario that we have got.
When anybody speaks about suicide, we as psychiatrists treat it as an utmost emergency. So even if a thought of suicide comes into somebody's brain, we need to understand that this thought can come down at any point in his life again. And this thought can be with any bigger severity also. So we cannot avoid the situation, and explaining him that this is a mental health issue and these thoughts are because of the underlying illness, and by repairing these thoughts or by taking treatment, we can actually overcome all these thoughts and these emotions and actually improve the quality of life. And if he is not able to understand, I think it is very much important to tell the responsible authorities, be it the parents or the police, because like I said, it takes a split of a second for that thought to dominate the brain. So somewhere there is always, a positive and a negative, balancing inside the brain. Most of the times it should be positive more, but at some point, if the negative dominates, at that point, the person will not be able to take a right decision, and, it might lead into a loss of person's life also.
Okay. Thanks, doctor. And doctor, we have gathered few questions and we got few questions from our team. So the first question is, a person who went to depression due to loss of some close person in the family, and especially in the scenarios like COVID or lockdown, they can't meet the friends or other family who are close to them because of this current scenario, and one side they're going into depression because they lost their close family. Other side, they were not able to meet any other person who can counsel them or any relatives who will try to console them. So in this kind of situation, what a person can do in order to come out of this kind of depression mode?
I think a lot of times what happens when we lose somebody in our life is built up emotions in our brain. So that built up emotions could be in the form of guilt. Like somebody might tell me that I wish I spent a little more time with that person, or I wish I did not fight with that person, or they say I wish I could have helped him out, or sometimes people try to blame themselves, thinking that I am the cause, maybe I did not do enough, or I did not get the right treatment. So these are a lot of confusing thoughts that actually erupt in somebody's brain, which totally disturb them. What we see in our clinical experiences during such grief reactions, many people, when they come down to us and when they start talking to us, they start feeling better. This has happened a lot of times when somebody's taken an appointment, come down to meet us, spoken for 20-25 minutes, and all of a sudden they say, "Doctor, I'm actually feeling a little better. So I haven't even said a word, I haven't even done anything." So that is the power of venting out your emotions. So it's something like, how relieved a school boy feels when he removes all that load of books from his shoulders. So
Yes,
that
yes,
is the
doctor.
kind of relief that they feel when they vent out their emotions. So during such hard times when you are unable to meet somebody, I think this is where we should utilize the best sources of technology, be it video chats, be it audio calls, be it writing down mails, or if none of them are possible, penning down our emotions itself. So when you're removing all the emotions from the brain and putting them on paper, one, you're relieving it here, and when you put it on paper, you can actually look into solutions also. And
Yes,
at the
yes.
same time, most of the psychiatrists in the city, all around the state and in the country, are even practicing telepsychiatry. So a one-on-one video consultation with a therapist or a counselor or a psychiatrist will also help them relieve. At this point, there is not much that we can do. It's not a reversible situation. But this is
Yes.
where I think acceptance therapy also comes into play, where we need to accept the current situation and move forward in life. Because if you practically talk, the world is not going to wait for us. We need to move on in life, and I think doing that in a systematic manner also helps us, get relief from this grief.
Thanks, doctor. That is very insightful.